Hello, this is Mark Baer. You're watching YourTown Television. My guest, Tom Gundlefinger O'Neal. It's the 50th anniversary box set of Deja Vu, the album, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, and Tom took the photography. Mr. Gundlefinger.
How are you?
We're going to start with the story on. So Tom has photographed all over the world, and he told me a story that has become our mantra in the work we're doing right now. And let's start with that.
Well, it was years ago on an assignment that I had to shadow a VIP group on the USS Carl Vinson, about 80, 90 miles off the coast here. And they were doing flight ops, and I was really excited about shooting all of this. But it's probably one of the most exciting photo shoots I've ever had. I even got to be inside the bubble when these guys are doing all this, and they were doing the cat watch. Phenomenal experience. But something that came out of that day was when the Admiral talked to this group, and he opened up his little lunch by saying, if you want a new idea, read an old book. And that resonated with me so much that it was just existential.
So that has become, of the work we've been doing together, and it became my mantra as well. I've been trying to explain to people, you want the new, look at the old.
You got it.
And that's just, it was quite profound. So let's hold up the album cover and let's just kind of start with that.
Well, this particular album has just been released. It is a re-release of the Deja Vu album, which came out over 50 years ago. This is a box set, and it contains additional photos. I'm very proud of the fact that I took the cover shot, and I also took these two shots in here from the outtakes. It comes with a booklet inside, and as well as 4 CDs, and it's a pretty big package, and they put a lot of time in designing this, packaging it. And the thing I'd like to point out about these two photos that were from in the outtakes, this one right here was the actual first choice for the album cover. No dog, completely different arrangement of the guys. But David Geffen, who was their manager at the time with Elliot Roberts, pointed out that you could not see Crosby's eyes in this. So they went with another choice, which was the one that everybody knows.
And now nobody looks at Crosby's eyes, they all look at the dog.
They look at the dog. The dog was a surprise. The dog walked into the frame, and I kept shooting, and I said, don't worry about the dog, he'll be a blur. And the dog moved on. The reason why I said the dog was going to be a blur, because they were actually looking at a camera that had a tintype, a ferrotype piece of metal in it, which was used during the Civil War period, and the group wanted to be as accurate as possible. So they were looking at this antique camera that was from the Civil War, the Matthew Brady.
The Matthew Brady camera.
Yeah, it was a Matthew Brady camera. I had gotten it from the prop department down in LA. It was actually real from that time. So they were actually looking at that. And the exposure for that tintype is about 2 minutes. So they just literally
froze.
Had to stay still. And I actually positioned them so they were all leaning on something, so they wouldn't move. The thing that a photographer should always have is a backup. Here I was trying something that was new. There was no internet at the time, so I had to do all my own research. And if it didn't turn out, I had to have another plan. So as they were posing for this long exposure with this Matthew Brady camera, I had two smaller 35 millimeter cameras on each side with conventional film, one with Tri-X, one with Plus X. So as they were sitting there like this, looking at this camera, I was shooting away, bracketing, just to make sure I would have something. Well, the tintype didn't have enough contrast for a real good reproduction. So they said that basically we got to go to what you shot extra. So we went into the proof sheets, and this is one of the shots and the one I just showed you. They said, we want to use this, but it still has to look and have that vintage quality to it. So I went back into the photo books from that era, and I found this one photographer, Fox Talbot. He had actually started before in the era of the tintypes. It goes back to 1845, and he would make these photos called sun prints. So I was lucky enough to get all the chemistry. I made my own fiberboard, coated it with the right emulsions, and I took a master negative that I had made from the original 35 millimeter negative. And in the process of making one negative and an inner positive and a negative and all that, you get resolution loss. Nothing like digital today where everything is retained. So each time I went another generation, something kind of deteriorated, which was a good thing because it made it look old.
It made
right?
it look old, right?
Yeah. So by the time I was done, I had a full-size negative this size, and I made a contact print in a contact printing frame in the sun out in front of my house on 4th Street in Santa Monica. And I watched this image appear. And I was the first one to see it. And that's what was used for this reproduction right here.
Sometimes you blow your own mind.
Yeah. So, and that will also answer the question which I get all the time. Well, if it's a long exposure, why is the dog in the photograph and why is he still? Well, it's because I used a negative that was taken at 125th of a second instead of 2 minutes.
So how did you get, let's go back to the beginning. In the beginning, how did you get the assignment?
Well, Stephen Stills was always fascinated with the photos of that era. They were stoic. They had a quality that were almost timeless. And so we kind of used the format of the pictures during the Civil War. And because I was, known a little bit more for being experimental amongst some of the photographers that worked with Crosby, Stills, and Nash, Gary Burden, the art director, asked me if I wanted to try and come up with something. And I jumped at it. I said, absolutely. I mean, we didn't know it was going to be called Deja Vu. They just wanted to have this old look to it. And at the time, and still today, you can very easily make a conventional photograph look old by one simple solution called sepia toning. And you can, in the darkroom process, in that very last step, you can take a black and white print and put it in the sepia tone solution, and it'll look antiqued and vintage and all that. Kind of. The reason why this is so convincing is that it doesn't have any clear whites, and it was made, from a technique from that time period. When you use sepia toning, it takes all the blacks in the photographs and it makes them brown or sepia color, but the whites kind of stay white. So there is if you know what you're looking for, you can tell there's a big difference between a sepia tone print and something as authentic as this. I even presented, that option to them because it would have saved a lot of time. And they said, absolutely not. The album was pre-sold 750,000 copies. And, people were chomping at the bit, the distributors and all that, to get it. And this particular album was very involved in the fabrication. And one of them was my photograph. So, I was part of the delay. But when I talked to Stephen Stills about it, he said, no, man, no, we want the real deal. And those are the core values of Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. Whatever they do, it's for real.
So listening to this music now, because I'm not nostalgic, you're not nostalgic, but it's entered the pantheon. It's become part of the American songbook now. It's not this stuff is timeless now. It's gone from a period piece to a timeless piece.
Absolutely.
And these images have gone from a nostalgic piece to a timeless piece. It's very interesting how that happens.
Well, every song is good. Even the song Deja Vu, which has Crosby wrote it and has a great kind of neo-jazz feel to it almost. Here it is on a rock and roll album. But Joni Mitchell wrote the ending song Woodstock,
I'm going to have you sing it because
No.
you can. So,
No, I was singing it earlier. Where's the lyrics? It'll come back to me in a minute about a child of God. But no, the lyrics are incredible. But Graham Nash talks about one of the songs on here, Our House. It's when he was living with Joni Mitchell, and they had been antique shopping, and she wanted to get this particular kind of vase, and they visited a store they had gone to a lot. She found the flower vase, they brought it home, and he basically, as they got into their place in Laurel Canyon, he said, you put some flowers in the vase and I'll light a fire. And that he thought about for a moment, and that's how Our House came about.
it's a very, very, very fine house.
Absolutely, 2 cats in the yard, you know. And it is a brilliant song. It touches your heart immediately, and it will be around for a long, long time.
The question we've been asking, in the work I've been doing, especially, is what's in a love song that makes you cry? And all those songs, they were able to touch those chords somehow.
David Crosby said, we were right about the love. I mean, they got it. Carry On, another fantastic song. And then there's a song on here that always moves me, and it's Almost Cut My Hair.
Almost cut my hair today.
Which has become anthemic for a whole genre of people that, hey, this is what we believe in, and we're holding to it. And not only when you cut your hair, you were giving up. You were accepting the fact that society was looking at you in kind of a negative way, and in order to be part of society, you would cut your hair. I went through it myself.
Isn't it amazing to think how you wore your hair could be something? Now there's nothing that it's very hard to make a statement, any kind of fashion, hair, whatever statement these days. But it was tribal then.
It was tribal, it signaled something,
yeah,
but it also
signaled.
frightened people.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember standing right very closely down here in town at Bruno's in line, and a little boy was standing by his mother, and he says, Mommy, look at that scary man over there. And my hair, I had a headband, and my hair was down out to here. I looked pretty crazy. And I looked around. Where's the scary man? And then I realized I was the scary man. So, I knew what it felt like to be stared at a time when the long hair it represented a culture, the counterculture, and there were a lot of negative implications about that. It's nothing today.
So after this, how did this influence your career?
Well, you never know really about anything on the impact until some time that goes by. And first of all, I had looked at the album and looked at this picture so much that I really, had lost all objective viewpoint. So I had to put it away for a while. And about 6 months later, I pulled out it again. I said, that's pretty good. And people started saying, when I'd be introduced or something, they'd be saying, this is Tom, he did the Deja Vu cover. And so this has followed me, and I've done a lot of photography. I'm still shooting. This was over 50 years ago. But this is part of my legacy, and it's amazing how having this as an accolade, what this has done for my career. It's given me incredible credibility.
Let's talk a little bit about the gallery that you just set up, because we better get to that.
Yeah, there is. It'll be open for until the end of this month. But Rachel Short has given me a show. It's her gallery, exposed gallery.
This is Carmel.
Yeah, in the little courtyard right off of San Carlos, just above Nielsen's. It's below Wells Fargo. There are Bar Mel's in there and Pescadero, and the gallery's very small, and it has a collection of photos of Joni Mitchell and David Crosby, and there's some other images that I'm working on right now where I'm very excited about. I'm painting on the black and white photographs from this era. I've got one of David Crosby there and one of Stephen Stills, and there's a little bit of Andy Warhol in there, and there's a little bit of some art school techniques that I learned when I was in college.
I started as a painter. You started as a painter. I think that's important.
So my mother art is painting, and then I really didn't study photography when I was in college. I went to UIC, which is the University of Illinois at Chicago, and then I also went to the Art Institute in Chicago when I was living there just for a little while. And I had some fantastic teachers. They went right to my core, and I'm still living with what they taught me, even as far along as it was.
For a life in art, art is long and life is short, and neither of us are nostalgic people. We're here and now people.
Yep, right now.
And the new is, your new work is as good as anything you've done. I mean, you're in your game. Your game is good.
No, I wake up in the morning excited about what I'm going to do with some of these photographs, and I mean they're all mixed media. I use acrylic, sidewalk chalk, magic markers, everything. They're contemporary techniques that some of which I even used though years ago. But I'm trying to take advantage of all the technology, the way I reproduce these and all that. It's a really exciting moment, and the feedback I've gotten is very positive. So this is where I'm going with this. It's exciting.
And then you and I have been collaborating for the last several months.
No.
And 1 and 1 makes 5, I hope.
No, when the two of us, when we get together, we're dangerous.
Yeah, we're having
we're
fun.
powerhouse. I feel very good. I mean, your ideas pop out, and I grab one, and then I look at it, woo, and then it goes back to you, and woo. It's a lot of woo.
Yeah, and because we're in this moment of a really new time coming out of COVID. COVID is something never anybody had ever experienced, and coming out of it, the energy is something that's unique in my life.
Yeah.
And the creative energy that you and I are feeling around us, and we're just trying to get there and grab it.
Yeah, we're exploding. It's all around, in all mediums, whether it's in filmmaking, in dance, writing, music. We all want to go to that creative resource within us, because once we get there and totally lock in to that creative zone, you can't beat it.
And then I've got to end this conversation with something that just makes me laugh. So there's a famous, Tom's son is a commercial director, and he did the Cabbage account, and it's the Gundlefinger account.
Yeah.
And hey, I'm the man from the future. We've
That's
got the Gundlefinger account. Well, all anybody can remember in this ad is the Gundlefinger account, and nobody can remember Cabbage.
Yeah. Yeah, the recall is great. It's just for the wrong thing. But
it was the best Gundlefinger ad ever.
It's just, I mean, here's a name that I was born with, and I was terrorized with growing up in Southern California, when everybody changes their name anyway. I lived mostly in Beverly Hills. So when Molly and I were going to have a son, I just said I can't bring a boy in the world with this name. And so I said, you've got a better name. I'll change my name to O'Neal. So I took my last name, made it my middle name. So I'm Tom Gundlefinger O'Neal, or just Tom G. O'Neal.
Tom G.
Yeah, and it's worked. But what was surprising is when my son called me a few years ago and said, I just had lunch with my agent, and he said, by the way, the guy told me, he said, your career will just blow up if you change your name to Gundlefinger.
What's happening?
And I'm 10 days in the future, spokes guy. That cabbage funding helped you win the Gundlefinger account. Congratulations.
What's a Gundlefinger?
Do you know what I went through? So you'd never have this name?
I think we can end this now.
Yeah.
That's bad.
All right.
Okay.
You're the best.
We've done it.
All right.